Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. We've just spent some time without you. We didn't record the last hour, but we're going to be recording this for posterity. I want to talk to you about the signs of the times. The Bible has a lot to say about the way this world is going to evolve and develop and end. But in the Bible, there are 8 things that need to be set in place before the Great Tribulation is very much underway. And I want to suggest to you that we've already seen 7 of them. It's February 2016. What are the signs of Christ's return? Well, if you look in the Bible, you will find out, to careful study, that there are no signs of Christ's return. None. Not one. But there are, and I hate to use the word because of the way it's been bandied about of late, there are harbingers. Globally, end-time events revolve around Israel. They revolve around a northern confederacy characterized as Magog. Scholars believe that is probably Russia, because it's characterized as the land of the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. It's up north, and they look at Moscow and Tobolsk. They have their old maps and so forth. They may be right, maybe not, but it is an enemy north, a northern confederation. What are the enemies of Israel to the north? It might be a more broadly regional designation, but think about Turkey. Think about, the Baltic states. And then, of course, there's Russia. The Bible talks about a southern confederacy, names Egypt and Libya. You could throw in a couple of more. I don't know. Ethiopia? I don't know. But right now, Egypt's playing nice with Israel and the Western world. They've just announced this week that they have gotten themselves back to what they were before. They were a dictatorship. They're back to a republic, I guess, or something where they have a vote. I've forgotten what they've called it. There's also in prophecy this 200 million man army that's coming in from the east. East of what? East of Israel, east of that region. What is east? We've always looked at China. China boasted a 200 million man army 40, 50 years ago. But east is also Persia. Now, Persia may be part of the other Gog, Magog, northern thing. We don't know. But this 200 million man army is going to proceed from the Euphrates, Revelation chapter 19, and it's going to kill 1/3 of the population of the world. Now that may just not be a human army. Today, Israel is alone in the world, largely isolated, surrounded by enemies. Her neighbors are Muslim, and they refuse to recognize her existence except as a target. The Western world has essentially abandoned her, insisting she accept and recognize the Palestinian Authority, which is basically a terrorist group operating as a legitimate state. Her refusal means no one will talk to her or do anything to help her, except when it serves their interest. The U.S. sends weaponry from time to time. We're told that our vice president's going to be over there shortly to talk to him. We don't know. Israel is regularly bombing Damascus. They're doing that from the Golan Heights. And they do it because insurgents keep massing on that border. They keep firing rockets into Israel. The Bible predicts that Damascus will become a ruinous heap. Isaiah chapter 35. Just this week, Israel announced plans to build a fence, a wall, all the way around Israel, 20 feet high, bristling, barbed wire, reinforced steel. Within Israel, within Jerusalem, is the Temple Mount. It continues to be a source of turmoil. Just this week, Israel announced that they're planning to build a new structure on the Temple Mount. That's enough to start a war. It will be adjacent to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The report cited Al-Aqsa Foundation for Endowment and Heritage, which claimed that a committee within the Israeli municipality of Jerusalem had submitted plans for the new structure. According to this foundation, the 3,700 square meter structure will be built near the Mughrabi Gate. It will consist of 5 floors, 2 of which will be underground. The building will reportedly be designed to include a Jewish museum, lecture halls, exhibition halls, a library, an archive center, and a center for information. The government of Israel has not officially responded to this report. Islam, once again, is on the move to conquer the world for Allah. This is the third major push since 900 AD. The world is treating this as a police action, a refugee problem. The first 2 times this happened, it took armies, nations, in concerted efforts over years to stop it. Millions of innocent people, largely Christians, at least non-Muslims, are being killed, enslaved, forced from their homes and ancestral homelands. Europe is awash in refugees, finding that a large number of these folks have the morals of an alley cat. Rape gangs, attacks against young girls in broad daylight as though it's normal and acceptable. We're hearing how these refugees, many of them look more like infiltrators. A large percentage are physically fit young men without families. Russia has made friends with Syria, giving her a legitimate stake in the region. Saudi Arabia, the Arab Emirates, and Turkey are talking about sending troops into Syria against Assad, against Russia, against Iran. It's a Sunni-Shia thing. Iran, Hezbollah, are Shia. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, they're Sunni. Syrian aid workers are said to have approached our Secretary of State just in the last week or so, seeking U.S. help in saving the Sunni insurgent groups who are on their last legs in Syria. John Kerry is reported to have responded with the phrase, "What do you want me to do? Go to war with Russia? Is that what you want?" If Americans and Russians start killing one another, the game is on. You remember the Benghazi thing? That was about the U.S. illegally supplying Sunni rebels with arms to topple Assad. We insinuated ourselves into that conflict. Now, those people want us to help them win it, but we can't. On the religious front, the Pope called for a global religious parliament, a meeting of the major religions of the world in Utah last October. Do you remember that event? I don't think it happened. Pope Francis is openly a Marxist, an ecumenist, an environmentalist, a globalist Jesuit. He advocates for the Jesuit agenda. The Jesuit agenda is all about the unity of faiths. Not that we would all kind of get together, but that everybody would be Catholic. It's in favor of a global constitution and global courts. They're talking not about cohabitation of faith, but the elimination of all faiths except Catholic. He's willing to accept that others have some truth and that God has allowed for that, but we all are to be brought under the umbrella of Rome. He just hugged and kissed the Metropolitan in Cuba, the head of the Eastern Orthodox Church. They excommunicated each other about 1,000 years ago. And the Pope and the Metropolitan are willing to get together again. Neither one of them are accepting the other as equal. Trust me. Jesuits were the force behind the Inquisitions, the burning of those heretics who dared to translate the Bible into the vernacular, or to print it, or to sell it, or to transport it, or any other number of historical events which are too long to even mention. By all accounts, the stage is set. World events are coalescing around the biblical narrative. All that's left is for that certain something that gets it all going. What would it take to require the Western world to send a supreme leader of some sort into the Middle East? What would have to happen for the United Nations, for example, to have 10 international representatives with political, financial responsibility and/or authority for the nations in their regions? Only one thing: money. The world is anxious to eliminate cash. We've talked about that on the show. Every week there are new stories on the subject, new events. This week is no different. There was a headline just this month, February 2016. Global equity market investors have lost $16.5 trillion, down 10%. 10% less than 2007 levels in market capitalization over the last 6 months, in a worldwide stock market sell-off that has wiped out any gains that the Obama recovery ever dreamed of. The prospect of recovery in global equity markets remains dim given economic projections, which indicate the price of oil worldwide will remain at or below $30 a barrel for the remainder of 2016, suggesting global equity markets will be on the precipice of an historic sell-off that could end up with a crash of 2016. A crash of that magnitude would dwarf the bank crisis that triggered a global economic recession at the end of George Bush's second term in office. The International Energy Agency concluded it was unlikely oil would fall below the worst-case scenario of $10 a barrel. But it was equally hard to see how the price of oil would increase above recent highs in the range of $30 a barrel. Did you know your president submitted a budget that called for a $10 a barrel tax? Yeah, they didn't go for that. 182-page budget arrived from Congress this week. Some of the highlights, other than what I just mentioned to you, was another $755 million for cancer research, $6 billion to help low-income teenagers get jobs, $4 billion for development of driverless cars, $4 billion for computer coding classes for children, $1 billion to curb the U.S. opiate abuse epidemic, $36 billion in new taxes on corporations, $56 billion more taxes on wealthy individuals. In the global sense, it's getting harder for nations to stand alone. One major financial event and the whole thing changes. Consolidation and control is the only real solution to global economic stability. And this is exactly what the Bible predicts for the end times. Will it happen before the rapture, or will it happen after? It really doesn't matter, because the technology exists today to make it work. What does it say about an American electorate that it can think seriously about electing an avowed socialist to be president of the United States? Can Bernie Sanders get elected in capitalist America? Well, this isn't capitalist America. We abandoned that in the 60s. It went away when the Great Society came in. And the tail's been wagging the dog ever since. We don't even ask anymore, is this right? Will this hurt our economic system? We just keep adding benefits and rights to the tune of 1/3 of our entire budget. Social systems are so embedded in our budgets and in our systems as to be thought normal. One of the dictionary definitions of a socialist says a stage of society in Marxist theory transitional between capitalism and communism. Marx said that. And it is distinguished by unequal distribution of goods and pay according to the work being done. Socialism leads to a system or a condition where there is no private property, where the means of production is owned and controlled by the state. Did you see your government bailing out banks? Where does it say they have the responsibility or the authority to do such a thing? Did you see what happened? Banking today is now controlled by 5 mega banks. Did you see the government bailing out General Motors? Did they cite constitutional authority? No. They said it was a moral imperative, a moral responsibility to protect these jobs. Does the government have a moral or constitutional responsibility to protect private business from losing whatever, employees or business itself? The answer is no. Now, it could be argued that the government caused it, in which case they probably had some culpability, but that wasn't their reasoning. Initially, the breach was plugged, but at tremendous cost. And now, nobody questions bailouts. Not much anymore. Should a socialist get elected president with the ability to issue presidential orders? And should a Congress continue their hands-off approach? And a Supreme Court with a social agenda? Can you say socialist republic? Now, what does all that say about the American electorate? What does that portend for America? I think it points to an economic meltdown, leading to a global economy based on nothing of real value. I think it points to a dissolution of our democratic republic in favor of a more populist form of government, which means one that's more easily manipulated. I think it talks about an abandonment of the rule of law in favor of the tyranny of the 51%, or just for the loudest voice. A dissolution of our national autonomy into a global economy, and then we'll have what the uneducated, immoral, opportunistic majority wants. Corporate slavery. Sheep being led around by our desires, by our dependents. The young people, they won't notice. We saw the studies earlier. Young people, 63% want a socialist government, don't have a problem with it, so they won't notice the difference. You got to be over 50 years of age to even know the difference or care. Donald Trump? Donald is not presidential. He is a foul-mouthed, opportunistic bully. Unlearned in the ways of diplomacy or even tact. But he has an America First message, and it plays well in conservative states, and apparently in New Hampshire. Can he deliver on the rhetoric? The rhetoric, carpet bombing ISIS into submission. Can he deliver on that? Fixing the economy. Can he do that? Building a wall all along our southern border and making Mexico pay for it. He can do that, right? He's already said, I'm bringing Ford back from Mexico. They don't know that. We just had another great big company move all their stuff down to Mexico. And Ford is on television advertising a new model that's coming out from Mexico. The media just doesn't know what to do with him. The Republican National Committee doesn't know what to do with him. The media seems now to be in love with Governor Kasich. A week ago it was, I think, Rubio. But Kasich is another moderate conservative. Will we ever see a president unwilling to sign a budget that doesn't balance? One that begins to pay back our unsecured debts? this one should have a conservative Congress to work with. What do you think's going to happen? I'm looking at Mitch McConnell and I'm saying, business as usual. If I were president, I would refuse to sign and I would veto anything that does not address our financial problem. We've worked 7 years without a budget. We can do it for another few. If we froze all increases to the budget for 5 years, didn't lower it, just stopped raising it, we'd probably be able to pay off most of our debt. That's how bad it is. In government, a department receives money based on what they spent last year, plus cost of living. If your guy is in the White House, no one's paying attention to you as a government worker. No business can survive very long doing that. What has to happen before Jesus can return? Everything's in place. The world is moving inexorably in that direction. All that remains, in my view, is the rapture of the church. I know some of you would disagree with that. It's okay. But when that happens, the Bible tells us that literally all hell breaks out. And a Western leader that's sent in to help Israel to take control of the economy and to get things back under control is doing so at the behest of our minders, our leaders, our financial gurus, men, women, and governments that can't afford for the world to go up in flames. A man who will come in on a white horse, ostensibly as Israel's savior, but will very quickly demonstrate that he's not. And he won't be able to get this thing under control. It'll get worse. There will be wars. There will be all sorts of seismic and pestilence and different things. There'll be death. It'll be a mess. But apparently we like it that way because we're not going to do anything to stop it.